In 1835, the New York Sun published a detailed scientific account of bat people, unicorns, and sapphire temples discovered on the moon, and millions of readers believed every word. The articles were written in the precise, authoritative language of academic science. They cited a real astronomer. They referenced a real scientific journal. The level of fabricated detail, species descriptions, architectural measurements, behavioral observations, was so thorough that rival newspapers reprinted the stories as news. Scientists traveled from Yale University to New York City to obtain copies. The hoax ran for a week before anyone questioned it. In August 1835, the New York Sun was a 3-year-old penny newspaper fighting to distinguish itself in a crowded market. Its editor, Benjamin Day, had hired a journalist named Richard Adams Locke, a Cambridge-educated Englishman with an elegant writing style and a gift for mimicking the voice of academic authority. Locke's plan was audacious: write a series of fictional scientific articles describing the discovery of life on the moon, attributed to the famous astronomer Sir John Herschel, and published in the Edinburgh Journal of Science, a real journal that had, conveniently, recently ceased publication, making it impossible to contact for verification. The articles were structured like legitimate scientific dispatches. They described Herschel's new telescope at the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, a real telescope that Herschel had actually installed there. They explained, in dense technical language, how the telescope's revolutionary design allowed unprecedented resolution of the lunar surface. Then they described what he had seen. The first article appeared on August 25, 1835. Over the following week, 5 more articles followed, each more detailed than the last. Herschel's telescope, the articles claimed, had revealed the lunar surface in extraordinary detail. There were vast oceans. There were forests of deep crimson and orange trees. There were herds of bison-like animals roaming lunar plains. There were blue and gold pheasants. There was a species of tailless beaver that walked upright and built fires. Then, in the 4th article, Vespertilio homo, batmen, creatures approximately 4 feet tall with copper-colored hair and large membranous wings that they used both for flight and as cloaks. They lived in colonies. They built structures. In the 5th article, a more refined version of the species appeared, more intelligent-looking, with shorter wings, engaged in what appeared to be conversation and social rituals near what the article described as sapphire temples. The language throughout was meticulous and dry. Species were given Latin taxonomic names. Geological formations were measured and described with apparent precision. The writing never winked or reached for drama. It read exactly like what it claimed to be: a scientific dispatch from a serious astronomer. Rival newspapers reprinted the stories without skepticism. The New York Times called them probable and possible. The Journal of Commerce sent a reporter to obtain early editions of The Sun before publication. Circulation of The Sun, already New York's highest, increased dramatically. A delegation of scientists from Yale University was reported to have chartered a stagecoach to New York specifically to obtain copies of the Edinburgh Journal of Science, in which the articles had supposedly appeared. The Sun's staff were forced to delay and redirect them to avoid exposure while the series was still running. Members of the public gathered in the streets to discuss the discovery. Preachers incorporated the Batmen of the Moon into sermons on the vastness of God's creation. A group of Baptist missionaries reportedly began planning a mission to bring Christianity to the lunar inhabitants. Edgar Allan Poe, who had published his own fictional story about a moon journey 2 months earlier, was furious. He believed Locke had plagiarized his basic structure and outperformed him in public impact. On September 16, 1835, 3 weeks after the first article appeared, the New York Sun acknowledged that the series had been a hoax. The admission was buried and understated. The paper noted that the articles had not originated from Sir John Herschel's actual observations. The public response was largely amusement rather than outrage. The articles had been entertaining. The writing had been excellent. The detail had been genuinely impressive. Many readers treated the revelation as confirmation of the Sun's cleverness rather than its dishonesty. Richard Adams Locke never publicly confirmed he was the author, though it was widely known. The Sun's circulation remained elevated. The hoax had made it the most talked-about newspaper in New York. Sir John Herschel, the real astronomer, learned about the articles while still in South Africa. His response was reportedly bemused exasperation. He had been used as a prop for a story he had no connection to, and strangers kept asking him about the Batmen. A journalist with a good prose style, a defunct scientific journal he could safely misattribute to, and a reading public that had no easy way to verify anything. And he convinced New York that there were winged humanoids living on the moon. The newspaper that convinced the world life was on the moon. Not a primitive credulity, not a story about people who were less sophisticated than we are. A story about how authoritative presentation, specific detail, and a single credible name attached to an impossible claim can get almost anyone to believe almost anything. The Batmen were never real. The mechanism that made people believe in them is: subscribe if you want more. See you in the next one.